With Hashem's loving grace, this is Laser Brody from the Holy Land of Israel with Amunah Beans podcast number 13. Today's beam is entitled The Nail in the Wall, and it's an amusing parable that brings a powerful message to every one of us. Our story takes place in Beverly Hills, where a prominent investment banker builds himself a $20 million mansion, complete with swimming pool and tennis court, 3-car garage, and a beautifully landscaped garden smack in the middle of high society's most sought-after neighborhood. One day, the front doorbell rings, and the owner opens the door himself, and he's alarmed to find this hobo-looking character standing at the entrance. Well, the disheveled down and outer says, "Good morning, sir. I want to purchase your home. It's quite beautiful." Well, the impatient banker says, "Well, thank you, but this mansion is not for sale. Besides, its market value exceeds $20 million. "Oh, that's exaggerated," says the hobo. "Beautiful, yes, but $20 million, no." So the hobo reaches into his vest pocket, his tattered overcoat that looks like it was a fifth-generation hand-me-down from the 99-cent rack at Goodwill, and he pulls out 2 stacks of $100 bills, 100 bills in each stack. Well, that's a total of $20,000. He says, "Here's my offer, sir. $20,000 cash on the barrel for your mansion." "Are you crazy?" says the banker. "$20,000 can't even pay for 1 square foot of this entrance foyer wall." "Oh, that's fine," says the hobo. "We finally started to negotiate. To show you that I'm an individual of reason, I'll offer you the same $20,000 in cash for a mere 1 square inch of the foyer wall, okay? The entrance foyer wall." Well, the banker's brilliant bargaining brain makes a quick calculation. There's 144 square inches in a square foot. So $20,000 in cash for a mere square inch multiplied by 144. That's equivalent to almost $3 million per square foot. Well, that's a tantalizing offer, but the banker still refused. "No problem," says the hobo. "Let's go metric. I'll give you the entire $20,000 in cash for a mere square millimeter of the foyer entrance wall, conditional on the fact that we sign an irrevocable contract, totally binding, and I can do whatever I want with my millimeter, and you can't object or interfere in any way whatsoever." The banker, blinded by the numbers and ignoring the hobo's conditions, he makes another calculation in his profit-programmed brain. There's 25.4 millimeters in an inch. So 1 square inch is 25.4 times 25.4, and that equals 645 square millimeters in a square inch. So at $20,000 per square millimeter, that's the equivalent of $12.9 million per square inch. Now multiply that by 144, because there's 144 square inches in a square foot, and you get a whopping $18.5 billion per square foot. Well, that's a deal that the banker could not refuse. Besides, the banker said to himself, what can the hobo possibly do with a mere square millimeter? He can't do anything with that. So he signed the contract, and he took the $20,000 in cash, and he stuffed it in his pocket, happy as a lark. But the banker's happiness did not last for long. Several days later, there was a heavy rain in Los Angeles. Well, the hobo rang the front doorbell again, and the banker answers. He says, "What do you want?" And the hobo says, "I want to exercise my contractual right to visit my millimeter in the wall." So he comes in with his muddy shoes, and he leaves this trail of gook all over the highly polished foyer floor. Well, another day goes by, and again the doorbell rings. Well, this time the hobo was carrying a hammer and a nail. And the hobo says, "I have a certificate from the Quality Control Division of the California Commission of Industrial Standards that this nail is less than 1/2 millimeter square in diameter. I therefore wish to exercise my contractual right and to bang it on my legally purchased millimeter of the foyer entrance wall." The banker, he couldn't say a word. When the hobo, he knocks the nail deep into the wall. Well, 3 days pass, no sign of the hobo. Okay, the banker's happy, he's got his $20,000 in his pocket. Oh, but then there's a ring at the front door. And as if he owns the entire mansion, the hobo walks right in, and he hangs his smelly old hat on the nail in the wall. Well, another 2 days pass, and the banker gets a letter from the District Court of Los Angeles. which recognized the hobo's petition as part owner of the mansion. Doesn't say how much, but he's still part owner. He owns a millimeter. But still, as part owner of the mansion, he should be granted a key to the front door. And the court accepted his petition. So now the hobo can rightfully visit his millimeter whenever he liked. And with no legal recourse, the banker was forced to give the hobo a key. Well, during the hobo's next visit, several days later, he hung up his frayed, weather-beaten coat that reeked like a mixture of expectorated chewing tobacco and pigeon droppings. The foyer was now smelling worse than a Hoboken sewer. That's not all. The following Friday, the hobo hung a bag with 2 fresh-caught carps from the local fish pond. He hung that in the wall, and then he disappeared. Well, that was Friday morning. By Monday morning, the fish smelled so bad that you couldn't smell the hobo's overcoat and hat anymore. A week later, the family was forced to use the rear entrance because the front floor was completely unbearable. It was terrible. A few days later, when the worms and the maggots gained control of the fish bag, an unbearable stench cloud overcame the entire mansion. When the banker and his family, they had to leave the house, and they had to pitch tents out in the backyard because they couldn't stand being in the house anymore. With no other choice, the banker had to put the house up for sale. But there were no takers at $2 million, much less $20 million. He was overcome with remorse and sadness, especially the next day. The LA Health Department, they put up a condemnation notice on the front door. And no one would even pay $200,000 for the whole mansion anymore. So finally, the hobo returned, and to make a long story short, he bought the mansion for a pittance of $20,000, the same peanut value sum that he bought the lone millimeter, taking advantage of the banker's lustful fantasy, thinking that he was making the deal of his life. Well, the gullible banker lost everything, and the hobo gladly bought for next to nothing. All the hobo had to do was throw out the bag of stinky fish and hire a cleaning and fumigating company, and now the whole mansion, assessed at $20 million, looking brand new, was completely his. Well, that, beloved brothers and sisters, is our parable. And it sounds funny, but it's really not. You know why? Because the hobo is the evil inclination. He's tempting each one of us with his chocolate-covered poison and his sweet-sounding deals. That, like chocolate-covered poison, they're sweet on the outside, but deadly toxic on the inside. You know, the mansion, that represents the human soul, and it's worth much more than the billions of dollars that at $20,000 a square millimeter. It's worth much more. You know why? Because it's a potentially befitting dwelling for the divine presence. So look how people sell their souls. It's really sad. The evil inclination tells them that it's only a nail on the wall. What's the big deal? Less than a millimeter. Well, people both young and old, both married and single, look what they do. They end up selling their personal holiness with the mere unauthorized first touch of the opposite sex. What's the big deal? The hobo asks. It's only a peck on the cheek, a mere nail on the wall. Well, we know how such things start, and we don't know how tragic they always end up. Look how people sell their integrity. To seal a deal or to make a sale, they'll stretch the truth a little bit, a little nail in the wall. But how many white lies end up in prison sentences for all kinds of shtick and money laundering and outright stealing and embezzling? That first little lie was only a nail in the wall. And people say, oh, I've got a ton of work. What's the big deal if I dive in my office instead of going to a minion this morning? That's only a nail in the wall. The same guy that doesn't go to the minion goes to his office. Soon, he won't be davening at all, and his tefillin will be collecting dust in the closet. Wait and see. It all starts with a nail in the wall. And the seminary girl says, oh, I'm not going to let them call me prude. I'm not going to let the other girls call me nibby. So she takes her hemline up a little inch, only nail in the wall. But before you know it, I don't want to finish the sentence. Don't let the Yetzer Hara, the stinky old hobo, bamboozle you by letting him have the slightest access to the wall of your heart. Because pretty soon, he'll be the owner and you'll be out of luck. We have nothing more valuable in the world than the sparkling cleanliness of our souls and their connection to Hashem. So even if you own a mansion, don't expect the divine presence to dwell there if the hobo's there too with his muddy shoes. So when the hobo rings the front door, your neshama, tell him, hey, mister, take a long walk off a short bridge. And if you can't do it by yourself, ask Hashem to help you. Hashem will be more than happy to help you. If you only turn to him and ask him for help in overcoming the evil inclination, Hashem will be right there. So be successful, cherished friends, and be courageous, and may the Almighty bless you always. Amen.